I need to share this because honestly, I've been waiting 6 years for this exact moment and it's finally happening. Not in a sad, therapeutic way. In a, I have been planning this for literal years way. The messages came in Thursday morning while I was in a department meeting. My phone kept buzzing in my pocket and I ignored it because we were going over Q4 projections. When I finally checked during break, I had 17 texts and 4 voicemails. Mom's text arrived first at 9:47 a.m. Don't come to Thanksgiving this year, William. Your sister says you're a pathetic waste of space and, honestly, we all agree. It's better this way. Dad followed at 9:53 a.m. Honestly, son, looking at you makes me sick to my stomach. Stay away from our real family. You were never really part of it anyway. My sister Haven sent hers at 10:02 a.m. Finally convinced mom and dad to ban the loser, LOL. Best Thanksgiving gift ever. Hope you enjoy your sad frozen dinner alone. Then mom again at 10:15 a.m. We're telling everyone you're in rehab. It's less shameful than the truth about what a complete failure you turned out to be. My brother Ryland chimed in at 10:23 a.m. Even the cousins laughed when we told them you're not coming. Nobody wants you around. Never did. Haven sent another at 10:34 a.m. Mom's using your old school photos as kindling for the fireplace tonight. Symbolic, right? Dad's final message came at 10:41 a.m. Your chair is already in the garage, like you should have been years ago. Should have known you'd never amount to anything. I read through all of them twice while standing in the hallway outside the conference room. My coworker asked if I was okay and I told him, yeah, just family drama. He nodded and went back to checking his phone. Here's what you need to understand. This wasn't shocking. This wasn't some sudden betrayal that came out of nowhere. This was the culmination of 6 years of planning on my part, and about 15 years of them being genuinely horrible people. I left home at 18 for college. State school, nothing fancy, but it was 3 hours away and that was the whole point. My family never understood why I wanted to leave our town. Population 8,000, everyone knows everyone. Nothing ever changes. Dad worked at the hardware store his whole life. Mom did bookkeeping for local businesses. Haven married her high school boyfriend at 19 and had 3 kids by 25. Ryland took over Dad's position at the hardware store when Dad's back got bad. They saw my leaving as betrayal. Not just leaving for college, but everything that came after. Getting a job in the city, renting an apartment, not coming home every weekend, not moving back after graduation. They took it personally, like I thought I was better than them. And honestly, I did think I was better than them, because they were mean, small-minded people who turned cruelty into a hobby. The breaking point happened 6 years ago at Christmas. I was 26, doing okay for myself, had just gotten promoted to senior analyst. I came home for the holidays because I still had this idea that family meant something. Haven spent the entire evening making comments about how I must be so important with my big city job. Dad kept asking when I was going to settle down and do something real with my life. Mom told everyone at dinner that I probably wasn't coming home much because I was ashamed of where I came from. Then Ryland started in about how I abandoned the family, how I left them struggling, how I thought I was too good for them now. I finally asked what they were talking about. What struggling? Dad had his pension, Mom had her clients. Haven and her husband both worked. Ryland had the hardware store job. That's when it came out. They needed money. Dad's truck had broken down, and the repair was going to cost $3,000. Haven's youngest needed braces. They wanted me to pay for it. Just hand over the money because I had a good job and they were family. I said no. Not because I couldn't afford it, I could, but because of the way they asked. The entitlement. The assumption that my money was their money. The complete lack of respect for what I'd built for myself. They lost it. All of them. Told me I was selfish, ungrateful, that they raised me, and this was how I repaid them. Haven actually said I owed them for existing. Dad said he wished I'd never been born if this was the person I was going to become. I left that night, drove back to the city at 11 p.m. on Christmas Eve. And right then, sitting in my car in a rest stop parking lot off Interstate 75, I decided that I was done trying to have a relationship with these people. But I wasn't going to just cut them off. That would be too easy. They'd make themselves the victims. Poor, abandoned family, their successful son too good for them now. No, I was going to make them dependent on me. Then I was going to take it all away. Here's what I did over the next 6 years. I reached out in January, apologized for leaving on Christmas, said I'd been thinking about what they said and they were right. Family should help family. Did they still need money for the truck? Dad was suspicious at first, but Mom smoothed it over. Of course I'd come around. Of course I understood my obligations now. They sent me the repair invoice and I paid it. All $3,000. Then in March, Haven called about the braces. $4,500. I paid it. In June, their roof needed work. $8,000. I paid that too. By the end of that first year, I'd given them almost $20,000, and they'd gotten comfortable with it. Started expecting it. When the washing machine broke, they didn't even ask, just sent me the invoice. When Ryland's car needed new tires, same thing. In year 2, I offered to help with Haven's kids' education. Private school was expensive, and the public school in their town wasn't great. I'd pay the tuition if they wanted. Haven and her husband jumped at it. 3 kids, $12,000 per year total. In year 3, their house situation came up. They were renting this place from a guy who wanted to sell. The house was $180,000 and they couldn't get a mortgage approved on their own. Mom called me crying about how they were going to be homeless. How could the landlord do this to them? I flew home that weekend, looked at the house, had it inspected. Then I bought it, outright, put it in my name. Had them sign a lease agreement for $800 per month, which was below market rate, but I wanted them comfortable. I told them I'd cover the property taxes and insurance. They just needed to pay rent and maintain the place. They thought I was being generous, finally acting like real family. Dad actually hugged me, first time in 10 years. What they didn't know was that the lease agreement I'd written included a clause allowing me to terminate with 30 days notice for any reason. They didn't read it carefully. They just signed. By year 4, I'd structured everything perfectly. I had copies of every payment, every invoice, every conversation about money. I had the house deed in my name. I'd co-signed for Dad's new truck because his credit was garbage. I was paying for Haven's kids' school, covering Mom's medical insurance premiums through my company's family plan, and sending a monthly allowance that they'd started treating like guaranteed income. They planned their whole lives around my money. Haven quit her part-time job because why bother when I was covering the school costs and helping with utilities? Dad retired early because his back hurt and I was covering his truck payment. Mom reduced her client list because she didn't need the stress. And the entire time they treated me like garbage. I'd come visit and Haven would make comments about how I must not have a girlfriend because I was too focused on work. Mom would hint that I should move back home, since I was clearly so invested in helping them anyway. Dad would tell me I needed to get a real job, something with my hands, not just sitting at a desk all day. Ryland barely spoke to me except to complain that I wasn't around enough to really be part of the family. The Facebook stuff started in year 5. Haven posted about her amazing family with pictures of everyone except me. Mom shared posts about how blessed she was with her 2 beautiful children and tagged only Haven and Ryland. Dad posted about family barbecues and game nights that I was never invited to. When I'd mention it, they'd gaslight me. What was I talking about? Of course I was part of the family. I was just being sensitive. Too busy with my important city life to come around anyway. Last Thanksgiving, I drove home. Spent 8 hours in the car. Brought expensive wine and pies from this bakery Mom had mentioned liking. Walked in and they'd already eaten. At 2 p.m. Thanksgiving dinner started at 5 p.m. according to the invitation Mom texted me. But they'd eaten early, on purpose. Because they wanted to go to Haven's in-laws' house and didn't want to wait for me. I stood there in their kitchen, the kitchen of the house I owned, holding pies I'd driven an hour out of my way to pick up. And Haven looked at me and said it was my own fault for not confirming the time. I ate gas station food on the drive home that night. This year, I didn't wait for an invitation. I knew what they were planning. They were going to exclude me again, probably more explicitly this time. The messages this morning just confirmed it. So, 2 weeks ago, I sent a package. Express overnight delivery, signature required. It was addressed to all of them, care of Nora Anderson, which is Mom's name. The package contained termination of lease agreement, effective December 1st, 30 days notice as required by our contract, formal request to be removed, as co-signer on Dad's truck loan, with a letter to the bank explaining I'd be disputing any future payments. The bank would likely repossess the truck within 90 days if he couldn't requalify a loan, which he couldn't. Withdrawal notice from the private school, effective end of current semester. I'd paid through December. January tuition was on Haven. Documentation showing I'd removed them from my health insurance effective January 1st. A brief note explaining that as of December 1st, all financial support would cease permanently. No more utility payments, no more random bailouts, no more monthly allowance. Nothing. And one final page, a printed copy of every single text message and Facebook post from the last 5 years showing exactly how they'd treated me while I was paying for their lives. The note I included was one sentence: Happy Thanksgiving. Open together. They opened it Wednesday evening. Based on the metadata from the delivery confirmation, it was signed for at 6:47 p.m. My phone started blowing up at 7:12 p.m. I was at the gym. I saw the calls coming in and let every single one go to voicemail. Didn't listen to them until I got home around 9 p.m. Mom's first voicemail was mostly crying. Incomprehensible sobbing about, how could I do this? What were they going to do? I couldn't just throw them out of their home. When did I become so cruel? Dad's was anger, yelling about how I had no right, how that house was theirs. They'd been living there for 3 years. I couldn't just kick them out. He'd call a lawyer. This was illegal. I'd regret this. Haven left 3 voicemails. The first was shock. This was a joke, right? I was just mad about Thanksgiving. We could talk about it. The second was panic about the school situation, her kids' education. How was she supposed to pay for private school? The third was rage. I was a horrible person. Her kids asked why Uncle William hated them. How could I do this to innocent children? Ryland's message was short. Just told me I was dead to him. That this proved what kind of person I really was. Then Mom called again. This time she was calmer. Said we needed to talk about this like adults. She understood I was upset, but this was too far. They were family. Blood? We don't turn our backs on family. Could we please just meet and discuss this? I deleted every message without responding. Thursday morning, the text messages started. The ones about Thanksgiving. They'd clearly had some kind of family meeting Wednesday night and decided their strategy was to double down. Make it clear I wasn't welcome. Punish me for threatening them. Show me they didn't need me. Except they do need me. Desperately. And now they're starting to realize it. The voicemails continued throughout Thursday. By the time I checked at lunch, there were 12 more. Mom begging, Dad threatening, Haven crying, Ryland calling me every name he could think of. One from Dad really stood out. He said the truck payment was due in a week and he couldn't make it without me. Said if the bank came for the truck, he'd have no way to get to his doctor appointments. His back was getting worse. Did I want him to suffer? Haven left one about how she'd already told her kids they were staying at their school. How was she supposed to explain this to them now? They'd lose all their friends. Did I hate her children? Mom's latest was about the house. Where were they supposed to go? Did I expect them to be homeless for Christmas? She had health issues. The stress of moving could literally end her. Did I want to be responsible for that? The thing is, every single one of those voicemails was about what I was doing to them. Not one apology. Not one acknowledgement of how they'd treated me. Not one person saying maybe we went too far with those Thanksgiving messages. Just anger that I dared to stop funding their lives. I'm writing this Friday night. I still haven't responded to any of them. My plan is to wait until Sunday evening, then send one group text with a very simple message. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because Friday afternoon, something else happened that I did not expect. Haven's husband called me, not from Haven's phone, from his own, which meant he'd saved my number separately. He asked if we could talk, said this had gotten out of hand. He wasn't part of the family drama, he just wanted to understand what was happening, because his kids were involved now. I told him everything, the full 6 years. Every payment, every snide comment, every Facebook post, the fact that I'd been planning this since that Christmas when they first demanded money. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said he'd talked to Haven, that he didn't realize how bad it had been, that he was sorry, but here's the thing. He didn't sound surprised. He sounded like he'd suspected something but never wanted to acknowledge it. And now he was in damage control mode because his comfortable life was about to get a lot less comfortable. The phone's been ringing all evening. I'm not answering. I ordered food. I'm watching a hockey game, and honestly, I feel great. 6 years of planning, of swallowing my anger, of playing the long game, and it's finally paying off. They wanted to exclude me? Fine. But they're about to learn that exclusion goes both ways. And unlike them, I actually have the power to make it hurt. Update coming soon. This is far from over. Update 1. Alright, so to everyone who said I should just block them and move on, I appreciate the sentiment, but that's not how this is going down. They want to communicate? Fine. Let's communicate. Sunday evening, I sent one group text to all 4 of them. It was short. I'll be at the house Tuesday at 10 a.m. to discuss transition details. Be there. Mom responded immediately. William, honey, please. We need to talk before that. Can you call me tonight? We can fix this. Dad sent. You better have a good explanation for this stunt. Haven. The kids are asking questions. You need to explain to them why you're doing this. Ryland didn't respond at all. I didn't reply to any of them. Just left it at that one message. Monday was when things started getting really interesting. Haven's husband called me again around noon. I was at my desk finishing up some reports, and honestly, I almost didn't answer. But I was curious what angle he was going to try now. He opened with small talk, asked how work was going, mentioned the weather, then he got to it. He'd talked to Haven over the weekend, and she was a mess. The kids were confused. His mother-in-law was having panic attacks. Did I really want to be responsible for tearing the family apart like this? I told him I wasn't tearing anything apart. I was just stopping my financial support. They were adults who could figure out their own situations. He tried a different approach. Said he understood I was angry, he got it. Family stuff was complicated, But maybe we could work out a compromise? What if they apologized? Really apologized, acknowledged how they'd treated me? Would I consider scaling back my support gradually instead of cutting them off completely? Here's what he was really saying. His comfortable life was about to implode, and he was scrambling to prevent it. Haven had quit her job. They'd gotten used to me covering the school costs. Their budget was built around my money, and now he was looking at having to tell his kids they were switching to public school and his wife that she needed to find work again. I asked him if Haven had shown him the text she sent Thursday morning, the ones about me being a pathetic waste of space. He went quiet. Then he admitted she had. He said she wasn't in her right mind. She was just reacting to stress. She didn't mean those things, except she did mean them. She'd meant every single comment like that for 6 years. The only difference was this time she put it in writing before she realized I had power over her life. I told him there was no compromise. Tuesday at 10 a.m. He could come if he wanted. He showed up to the house 15 minutes early. I got there right at 10 and he was sitting in his truck in the driveway looking miserable. Dad's truck was there too, Haven's SUV, Mom's sedan. The whole family gathered, just like I'd planned. I walked in without knocking. It's my house after all, even if they'd been living in it like it was theirs. They were all in the living room. Mom on the couch looking like she'd aged 10 years since I last saw her. Dad standing by the window with his arms crossed. Haven sitting on the love seat with her husband next to her. Ryland leaning against the wall near the kitchen. Mom stood up when I came in, started talking before I'd even closed the door. William, sweetie, thank God you're here. We need to talk about this rationally. This has all gotten so out of hand. We're family. We can work through this. I sat down in the armchair, the one that used to be mine when I lived at home, actually. They'd kept it all these years. I told them we weren't working through anything. I was here to discuss practical matters. When they'd be out of the house. How to handle the school withdrawal. That kind of thing. Dad jumped in. Said I was being ridiculous. They'd lived in this house for 3 years. They had rights. I couldn't just kick them out because I was throwing a tantrum. A tantrum. 6 years of financial support characterized as a tantrum. I pulled out my folder. Yes, I brought a folder. Inside was the lease agreement they'd signed. I opened to the termination clause and showed it to Dad. Read it out loud. Either party may terminate this agreement with 30 days written notice for any reason. He tried to argue it wasn't legal, that I'd tricked them into signing it, that no judge would uphold it. I told him to feel free to consult a lawyer. The clause was standard. I'd had it reviewed before they signed. Everything was completely legal. Haven started crying. Real tears, not the manipulative kind. She kept saying, what about the kids? What about her kids? They loved their school. They had friends there. How was she supposed to tell them they were leaving? I asked why she didn't think about that before sending me those texts on Thursday. She insisted she didn't mean them. She was upset about something else. She took it out on me. It wasn't personal. Not personal. Being called a pathetic waste of space by your sister isn't personal, apparently. Her husband put his hand on her shoulder, tried to calm her down. Then he looked at me and asked what it would take. Seriously, what would it take for me to reconsider? The answer was nothing. There was no price, no apology would be sufficient. They'd shown me who they really were for 6 years, and I'd finally accepted it. Mom switched tactics, started talking about her health. Her blood pressure was through the roof. Her doctor said the stress could cause a stroke. Did I want that on my conscience? Did I want to be the son who gave his mother a stroke? I asked if she wanted to be the mother who told everyone her son was in rehab to avoid admitting he was successful without them. She actually had the nerve to look offended, said that was taken out of context. She was just trying to explain my absence to relatives. It was easier than getting into all the complicated family dynamics. Complicated family dynamics. That's what we were calling their years of contempt and exploitation now. Ryland finally spoke up, said I was proving their point, that I thought I was better than them, that I'd always been selfish and this was just the ultimate expression of it. I turned to look at him. My younger brother, who I'd barely had a relationship with since I left for college, asked him if he'd ever once thanked me for any of the money I'd given this family, if he'd ever acknowledged that his job at the hardware store existed because I'd kept his parents financially stable enough that they didn't need his help. He told me that's what family does. You help each other. You don't keep score. Except they did keep score. Every time I didn't visit enough, every time I prioritized my life over theirs, every single Facebook post that excluded me was them keeping score. Dad tried to redirect, said fine. We all had issues with each other, but we needed to focus on practical solutions here. Could they have 60 days instead of 30? Could I cover January's expenses to give them time to adjust? No and no. Haven's husband jumped in. He'd been mostly quiet, but now he was clearly panicking. Asked if I'd at least pay through the end of the school year. His kids didn't deserve to be punished for adult problems. Here's the thing about that argument. Those kids had been part of the problem. Haven had taught them that Uncle William was the weird one who didn't fit in with the family. They barely knew me. When I did visit, they'd repeat the same dismissive attitude their mother had. Not because they were bad kids, but because they'd been taught that's how you treat the family outsider. I told him the notice had been submitted to the school. January tuition was due December 15th. If he wanted to pay it, he was welcome to. The number was $4,000 for all 3 kids. I watched his face process that reality. Mom started crying then, actual sobbing. Said she didn't understand how I could be so cold, that she raised me better than this, that something must be wrong with me to be able to hurt my family this way. And there it was. The core belief that had driven everything. Something was wrong with me. Not with them for treating me like garbage while taking my money. Not with them for excluding me from their lives while expecting me to fund those lives. With me, for finally having enough. I stood up, told them I'd be back on December 1st with a moving truck to collect anything I'd left in storage here. They had until then to be completely moved out. Dad blocked the door, physically stepped in front of it, said we weren't done talking, that I owed them more than this. I asked what exactly I owed them. Itemized it. They fed and housed me until I was 18, which is literally the legal minimum requirement for parents. I'd paid them back that and more over the last 6 years. So what did I owe them? He couldn't answer, just kept saying family doesn't work that way. You can't put a price on family, but they had put a price on it. 6 years ago when they demanded that $3,000. Every invoice they'd sent me since. Every expectation that my money was theirs to spend. I pushed past him and left. Got to my car and Mom came running out. Literally running down the driveway in her house slippers. Grabbed my arm before I could get in. Begged me to reconsider. Said she'd talk to Haven and Dad. Make them apologize properly. We could work this out if I'd just give them another chance. I asked her how many chances she thought she deserved. Because I'd been giving her chances for 6 years and she'd used every single one to make me feel like less. She started crying again. Said I was her son. She loved me. How could I do this? I got in my car and drove away while she was still standing there in the driveway. The calls started immediately. Haven first. Crying so hard I could barely understand her. Something about her marriage falling apart. Her husband was furious with her for torpedoing their financial stability. He was talking about separation, about taking the kids. This was all my fault? My fault? Not hers for spending 6 years being cruel to me. Mine for finally stopping the money. Dad called next. Back to anger. Said I was making a huge mistake. That I'd regret this. That blood was thicker than water and someday I'd need them and they wouldn't be there. The irony of that statement was apparently lost on him. Mom texted throughout Tuesday evening. Long, rambling messages about family and forgiveness and how I was breaking her heart. How could I be so cruel to the people who raised me? What had happened to the sweet boy she'd known? That sweet boy had been beaten down by your contempt for 15 years, Mom. He finally got tired of it. Wednesday morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Turned out to be Haven's mother-in-law. She'd gotten my number from Haven and wanted to talk to me about what I was doing to her grandchildren. The audacity of this woman. She didn't know me. Didn't know anything about the situation except Haven's version. And she was calling to lecture me about family responsibility. I told her if she was so concerned about her grandchildren's education, she was welcome to pay the tuition herself. Then I hung up. That call was followed by 2 more. Extended family members who'd gotten pulled into this. My aunt on Dad's side, a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 8 years. All of them with the same message. Family takes care of family. I was being selfish. Think of what this was doing to my parents. None of them had cared when I was excluded from family events. None of them had noticed when I didn't appear in any of the Facebook posts. But now that I was causing problems, suddenly everyone had opinions. By Wednesday evening, I'd gotten 23 calls and 47 texts from various family members. I didn't answer or respond to any of them. Thursday morning, something shifted. Haven sent a text that was different from the others. No crying, no begging, just, we need to talk about Dad's truck. The bank called. They're starting repossession proceedings unless you reverse the cosigner removal. I didn't respond. She texted again. William, I'm serious. They're going to take the truck on Monday if we don't handle this. He needs that truck for medical appointments. Still didn't respond. Then Dad called. His message was short. You're really going to let them take my truck? Over Thanksgiving. This is who you are now. Yes, Dad. This is who I am now. Someone who doesn't let you use me anymore. Friday afternoon, the school called me directly. Not Mom, not Haven. The principal said there seemed to be some confusion about the tuition payment, that I'd submitted a withdrawal notice but the children were still attending. They needed clarification by Monday or the children would be unenrolled. I told them to proceed with the unenrollment. The principal tried to argue. Said the children's education shouldn't suffer because of adult disagreements. that surely we could work something out. I asked if she'd be willing to teach those children for free, because that's essentially what she was asking me to do, pay for someone else's kids so they wouldn't be inconvenienced. She got quiet, then said she'd proceed with the withdrawal. Haven called me 17 times Friday evening. I let every call go to voicemail. Her messages evolved. First panic about the school, then anger about how I was using children as pawns, then back to panic about what they were going to do. Saturday morning, I woke up to a text from Mom. Please, son. Please, we'll do whatever you want. Just tell us what you want. And that's what I've been thinking about all weekend. What do I want? Because the revenge part is working. They're panicking. Their comfortable life is falling apart. Haven's marriage is in trouble. Dad's about to lose his truck. The kids are about to switch schools. They're all facing real consequences for how they treated me. But I keep coming back to those voicemails, those texts. The fact that not once has anyone actually apologized for their behavior. They're sorry about the consequences, not sorry about the cruelty. So here's what I'm going to do. And honestly, the petty part of me is really excited about this. I'm not reversing anything. December 1st is happening. They're moving out of my house. But I'm going to make them an offer. A very specific offer that will make absolutely clear what this was always about. More updates coming. Trust me, this gets better. Update 2. Okay, so the offer. Let me tell you about the offer I made them because apparently I'm more ruthless than I thought I was, and honestly, I'm okay with it. Monday morning, I sent another group text. I'm willing to discuss a 6-month extension on the house and reinstatement of some financial support. One condition. You each write me a letter explaining specifically what you did wrong and why you did it. Not why you're sorry now. Why you treated me that way in the first place. Due Friday. All 4 of you. The responses came in fast. Mom, oh, thank God, honey. Yes, of course we can do that. We'll write whatever you need. Haven, this is blackmail. Dad, you want us to grovel in writing so you can feel superior. Ryland, whatever, man, if that's what it takes. I didn't respond to any of them. Just waited. Tuesday, the bank repossessed Dad's truck. Mom called me while it was happening. I could hear Dad yelling in the background at the repo guy. She was crying, telling me this was my fault. I could stop this right now if I wanted to. I asked if she'd started her letter yet. She hung up on me. Haven texted Tuesday afternoon. My husband moved out. He's staying at his brother's place, says he needs space to think. The kids keep asking where Daddy is. Hope you're happy. I wasn't happy exactly, but I wasn't unhappy either. Her husband leaving wasn't my doing. That was them finally facing consequences they'd built together. She'd quit her job assuming my money was permanent. He'd gotten comfortable with a lifestyle they couldn't actually afford. Now reality was catching up. Wednesday, I got a call from Ryland. Actual call, not text. He asked if we could talk in person, said he wanted to explain some things face to face. Asked if I'd meet him at the hardware store after his shift. I agreed, mostly because I was curious what angle he was trying. The hardware store closed at 8 p.m. I got there at 8:15 and he was waiting outside. We sat in my car because it was cold and I wasn't going anywhere private with him. He started by saying he'd been thinking about everything, about how the family treated me. He admitted they'd been harsh, that they excluded me, that it wasn't fair. I waited for the but he said they did it because I'd abandoned them first. When I left for college and didn't come back, it hurt everyone. Mom and Dad felt rejected. Haven thought I was too good for our family. He grew up watching me pull away from everyone who loved me. So yeah, they got defensive. They protected themselves by pushing me further away. It became a pattern. I asked if that pattern included taking my money for 6 years while treating me like garbage. He said the money complicated things. Once I started paying for stuff, they started resenting me more because it proved what they already thought. That I believed money could replace actually being present. That I was trying to buy my way back into a family I'd rejected. Here's the thing. He wasn't entirely wrong. I did leave. I did pull away. I did choose my life over theirs. But that doesn't excuse 6 years of contempt. And it definitely doesn't excuse those Thanksgiving texts. I told him that. He said he knew. Said his letter would acknowledge all of it. He just wanted me to understand where they were coming from. That it wasn't random cruelty. It was hurt people hurting the person they blamed for hurting them first. I asked if that made it okay. He said no, but it made it human. We sat there for a minute. Then he asked what would actually fix this. If the letters weren't really about reconciliation, what was my endgame? I told him the truth. I didn't have an endgame beyond making them feel what I'd felt. Powerless, excluded, like their life could be upended by people who were supposed to care about them. He asked if that would actually make me feel better. Honestly, I didn't know. But I was going to find out. Thursday morning, Mom showed up at my apartment. I don't know how she got my address because I'd never given it to her. Probably got it from Haven, who got it from some Christmas card list years ago. She buzzed my intercom at 7 a.m. while I was getting ready for work. I almost didn't let her up, but I was curious how desperate she'd gotten. She looked terrible. Hair uncombed, wearing sweatpants and an old jacket. This was a woman who always cared about appearances, and she'd clearly stopped caring. She handed me an envelope as soon as I opened the door. Said this was her letter. She'd finished it last night. Please would I read it now while she was here. I told her that wasn't how this worked. I'd read all 4 letters together on Friday. She started crying. Said she couldn't wait that long. The landlord had called, asking when they were moving out. She needed to know if I was serious about the extension. They had nowhere to go. She'd called around and there were no rental houses available in their price range. Even apartments were too expensive without my help. I asked what their price range was. She said they could afford maybe $600 a month. $600 a month. In an area where the average rent was $1,200. They'd gotten so used to me subsidizing their lives that they'd never built any financial cushion. Every extra dollar had gone to comfort instead of savings. She begged me to read the letter, said she'd poured her heart into it, that she explained everything, that I'd understand once I read it. I took the envelope but didn't open it. Told her I'd see her Friday. She grabbed my arm, asked what time Friday. Where were we meeting? She needed to know so she could prepare the others. I said I'd text them details Thursday night. She left looking even more defeated than when she'd arrived. Work was impossible Thursday. I kept thinking about that envelope in my bag, about what Mom had written. Part of me wanted to read it immediately. Part of me wanted to throw it away without reading it. I ended up reading it during my lunch break. The letter was 4 pages. Handwritten. Her handwriting got messier as it went on, like she'd been crying while writing. She started with the obvious stuff, apologizing for the texts, for excluding me from Facebook posts, for not defending me when Dad and Haven were cruel. She said she was a coward who went along with the family narrative because it was easier than standing up for me. Then she got into the why. She wrote about how proud she was when I got into college, how she bragged to everyone in town about her smart son. But then I didn't come home after freshman year. I got a summer internship instead, and that hurt because she'd been planning on having me home, on things going back to normal. Sophomore year I came home for Thanksgiving but not Christmas. Said I had to work. Junior year I barely visited at all. By senior year she felt like she'd lost me to a life she couldn't understand or be part of. When I moved to the city permanently, it confirmed her fears. I'd become someone she didn't know, someone who cared more about career than family. And that rejection hurt so much that she let herself believe the narrative Dad pushed, that I thought I was better than them, that I'd abandoned my roots. The money made it worse, she wrote, because it proved I had resources I wasn't sharing until they literally asked for it. And once they asked, the dynamic changed. I became the rich son doing charity for his poor family. She hated that feeling, but she couldn't turn down the help because they needed it. Every payment I made reminded her that I'd succeeded in ways they never would, that I'd escaped the town that they were still stuck in. So she let herself participate in the cruelty because it was the only way she felt like she had any power in the relationship. The letter ended with, I know none of this excuses what I did. I know I hurt you in ways that can't be undone. But you asked why, and this is why. Because I felt abandoned and powerless and small. And hurting you made me feel less small. I'm so sorry, William. I'm so sorry I let my pain turn me into someone who could hurt her own son. I sat in my car reading that letter 3 times. And you know what I felt? Angry. More angry than before. Because she'd just confirmed what I'd suspected all along. They resented my success. They punished me for building a life outside their small town. And instead of being happy for me, instead of supporting me, they made me pay for it. Literally and figuratively. The letter wasn't really an apology. It was an explanation that made everything worse. Thursday evening, I texted the group. Friday, 6 p.m. The house. Bring your letters. Haven responded. Can we do Saturday instead? I need time to finish mine. I said no. Friday or the offer expires. Dad texted. This is ridiculous. You're treating this like some kind of power game. That's exactly what it was, Dad. A power game. One I'd been losing for 15 years until I finally learned the rules. Friday morning, I woke up to a text from Haven sent at 3 a.m. I can't write this letter. Every time I try, I just keep thinking about my kids, about what you're doing to them. They don't understand why their school changed, why their dad is gone, why Uncle William hates them. I know you said this isn't about the kids, but everything you're doing affects them. And I can't write a letter taking responsibility for being mean to you when you're actively destroying my children's lives. So I guess I'm calling your bluff. Do what you're going to do. I can't play this game anymore. Interesting. Haven was trying a different strategy. Refusal. Hoping I'd back down if she stood firm. I didn't respond. At work Friday, I was useless. Kept checking my phone. Kept wondering if anyone else would refuse to write letters. if they'd all show up at 6 p.m. or if this whole thing would fall apart. My coworker asked if I was okay, and I told him family stuff was getting complicated. He said families always get complicated around the holidays. Then he invited me to his place for Thanksgiving next week if I needed somewhere to go. That caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on revenge, I hadn't actually thought about what I was doing for Thanksgiving. Probably ordering Chinese food and watching football alone, which honestly sounded perfect. I left work at 4 p.m. to drive to my hometown, stopped at a gas station on the way and grabbed coffee. Sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, just gathering my thoughts. This was it. The confrontation I'd been planning for 6 years, and I had no idea how it was actually going to go. I got to the house at 5:45 p.m. Everyone was already there. All 4 cars in the driveway. They'd probably been there for an hour, talking strategy, preparing themselves. I walked in and they were arranged like last time. Mom and Dad on the couch. Haven sitting alone on the love seat. Ryland at the kitchen counter. No one spoke when I came in. I sat down in my armchair and waited. Mom broke first. Asked if I'd read her letter, the one she'd given me Thursday. I said I had. She asked what I thought. I told her it made everything worse. That knowing she resented my success didn't make me want to forgive her. It made me want to punish her more. She started crying. Again, always crying when things didn't go her way. Dad pulled out an envelope, said he'd written his letter, that we could all share them now and move forward. I asked where Haven's letter was. Haven said she didn't write one, that she couldn't participate in this anymore, that I was welcome to do whatever I wanted, but she was done jumping through my hoops. I stood up to leave. Mom panicked, told Haven to just write the letter, to stop being stubborn. They needed this extension. They had nowhere else to go. Haven snapped back that she wasn't going to grovel to someone who was destroying her family, that she'd already lost her husband over this and she wasn't losing her dignity too. Ryland tried to mediate, said everyone needed to calm down, that fighting with each other was exactly what I wanted. He wasn't wrong. I told them they had until midnight tonight to get me all 4 letters. If even one was missing, the offer was off the table permanently. Dad exploded, started yelling about how I was manipulating them, how I was enjoying watching them suffer, how I'd turned into something cruel and small. I asked if that was going in his letter. He threw his envelope at me. It hit my chest and fell to the floor. I picked it up and left without another word. Got to my car and Mom came running out again, becoming a pattern with her. She was crying and begging me to wait. Said she'd make Haven write the letter. Just please give them a few more hours. I told her midnight. Not a minute later. Drove back to the city. Got home around 8 p.m. Opened Dad's letter. It was half a page. Barely anything. Just, you wanted to know why we treated you badly. Because you made it clear our life wasn't good enough for you. You left and never looked back. We were supposed to just smile and be happy while you showed us how much better you were. Of course we were angry. Of course we lashed out. You made yourself a target by leaving. This is on you as much as it's on us. Classic Dad. Couldn't take responsibility even when he was supposed to be apologizing. At 11:47 p.m., I got an email. All 3 remaining letters attached. Haven's, Ryland's, an updated one from Mom. I opened Haven's first. She'd written, "You want to know why I treated you badly? Fine. Because watching you succeed while I stayed in this town raising kids and working jobs I hated made me jealous. Because every time you visited, you made me feel small and trapped. Because I resented that you got to leave and I didn't. Because taking your money felt like taking back something you owed us for getting out while we stayed stuck. And because those Thanksgiving texts weren't just about being mean, they were about finally saying what I'd been thinking for years. That I was angry at you for having choices I never had. There. Happy now?" Ryland's was more thoughtful. Talked about growing up in your shadow. About how everything was always about William the smart one, William the successful one. How he'd spent his whole childhood being compared to me and found lacking. How when I left, there was this relief that at least now the comparisons would stop. But they didn't. Because even absent, I was still the standard they measured him against. And yes, he participated in excluding me. Because excluding me was the only way to not feel inferior to me. Mom's updated letter was mostly about fear. Fear of losing her family. Fear of not having enough money to survive. Fear of me completely abandoning them. She wrote that she knew her first letter hadn't been what I wanted. That she'd tried to explain instead of apologize. So here was the real apology. I was wrong. I hurt you intentionally and repeatedly. There's no excuse for that no matter how hurt or scared I was. You deserved better from me. From all of us. I read all 3 letters twice. Then, I sat there in my apartment trying to figure out what I actually wanted to do with this information. Because they'd done what I asked. They'd been honest about why they hurt me. And it didn't make me feel better at all. It made me realize something worse. They were never going to see me as anything other than the person who abandoned them. And I was never going to see them as anything other than the people who punished me for succeeding. There was no reconciliation possible here. No happy ending where we all understood each other and moved forward as a family. This was permanent damage, and I had to decide what to do with that. Final update. So I made my decision Saturday morning. I responded to the group email with all 4 letters attached. Thank you for your honesty. The answer is no. December 1st stands as planned. You have 6 days. Mom called immediately. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail that was mostly incomprehensible crying. Something about how she'd poured her heart out and I was still going to destroy them. Dad texted, "You're making the biggest mistake of your life. We're done. Permanently." Good, I thought. That's exactly what I wanted. Haven sent a long text about how she'd humiliated herself writing that letter, how she'd admitted things she'd never said out loud, and I was still punishing her. What kind of person did that make me? The kind of person who'd spent 6 years planning this exact moment, Haven. That's what kind. Ryland was the only one who didn't immediately lash out. His text came an hour later. I figured that's what you'd say. For what it's worth, I understand why. Doesn't mean I agree with it, but I understand. Sunday was Thanksgiving. I ordered Thai food and watched football alone in my apartment. My coworker had texted again about his invitation, but I declined. This was exactly where I wanted to be. Exactly what I'd planned. Around 3 p.m., my phone buzzed with a Facebook notification. Haven had posted a photo of their Thanksgiving table with the caption, "Grateful for the family that shows up." Not everyone understands what that means, but the people who matter do. The photo showed Mom, Dad, Ryland, Haven's 3 kids, and her husband. So he'd come back for Thanksgiving. Interesting. No mention of me. No empty chair symbolically holding my place. Just a family photo that proved I'd never really been part of their family anyway. I screenshotted it, added it to my folder of evidence. Not that I needed more evidence, but I was keeping everything. Monday morning, the calls started again. But this time, it was different. Not begging or anger. Strategy. Mom called first. Said they'd hired a lawyer to review the lease agreement, that they were going to fight the eviction, that I couldn't just throw them out without proper legal process. I told her to have her lawyer call my lawyer. Then I gave her my lawyer's contact information. I'd actually retained a real estate attorney 3 months ago specifically for this situation. He'd reviewed everything and confirmed I was completely within my rights. She said they couldn't afford a lawyer, that they were just trying to scare me into backing down. I hung up. Dad tried next. Said they'd talked to the landlord who owned the house before I bought it, that he'd agreed to testify that they'd had an implied verbal lease that superseded my written one. That was a lie. I knew it was a lie because I'd specifically checked with the previous landlord when I bought the house. He'd confirmed they were month-to-month tenants with no special agreements. I told Dad if they wanted to commit perjury, that was their choice. Haven's husband called Tuesday morning. This was unexpected because he'd mostly stayed out of the direct conflict. He said he wanted to meet in person, that he had something to discuss that might change my mind. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Mostly because I wanted to know what he thought he had. We met at a diner halfway between the city and their town. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a booth drinking coffee. He got straight to it, said Haven's mother had offered to lend them money. Enough to cover first and last month's rent on a new place plus moving costs, but only if I agreed to let them stay through January. Give them 2 months instead of 1. His mother-in-law wouldn't help if they were being forced out in December because it looked too rushed. I asked why I should care about his mother-in-law's conditions. He said because Haven was having a breakdown. Not a manipulative breakdown, a real one. She'd stopped eating, wasn't sleeping. The kids were scared because Mom kept crying. His marriage was hanging by a thread, and if I forced them out in December, it was over completely. I asked if he'd read the texts Haven sent me on Thanksgiving. He admitted he had, said they were cruel and inexcusable, but that Haven had written them in a moment of anger and didn't represent who she really was. Except they did represent who she really was. That was the whole point. People don't say things that cruel unless they mean them on some level. He tried a different approach, asked what I actually wanted from all this. If the goal was to hurt them, I'd succeeded. They were hurting. If the goal was to make them understand how they'd treated me, they understood. So what was the end game? When did it stop? I told him it stopped when I decided it stopped, not when they'd suffered enough by their own measurement, when I decided they'd suffered enough. He said that wasn't fair. I asked him if he thought 6 years of taking my money while treating me like garbage was fair. He didn't have an answer for that. I paid for my coffee and left. Wednesday morning, I got a call from the private school. The principal again said Haven had come in Tuesday afternoon and caused a scene, demanding they let her kids stay enrolled, offering to work at the school in exchange for tuition, getting increasingly agitated when they explained that wasn't how it worked. Security had to escort her out. The principal was calling as a courtesy to let me know they were considering a restraining order if she came back. I thanked her for letting me know. That's when it hit me how completely their lives were falling apart. Haven wasn't just losing her house and her kids' school. She was losing control entirely. And part of me, the part that had been planning this for 6 years, felt satisfied. This was exactly what I wanted. Thursday, I got a text from Ryland. Dad's in the hospital. Chest pains. They think it's stress-related. Mom wanted you to know. I didn't respond. Didn't call. Didn't go to the hospital. If Dad was having stress-related health issues, that was between him and his doctor. Friday morning, November 30th, I got one final text from Mom. Please, William. One more month. Just give us January. We'll be out by February 1st. I'm begging you. Your father is sick. Haven is falling apart. We can't do this in a week. I replied, I'll be there tomorrow at 10 a.m. with a moving truck. Everything you own needs to be out of the house or it becomes my property. See you then. She tried calling. I didn't answer. Saturday morning, I rented a moving truck and drove to my hometown. Got to the house at 9:45 a.m. The driveway was full of boxes and furniture. They'd actually packed. I parked on the street and walked up. The front door was open. Mom was sitting on the porch steps looking exhausted. Dad was in the driveway directing Ryland and Haven's husband as they loaded things into Haven's SUV and a rental van. Haven was inside with her kids wrapping dishes in newspaper. I walked past Mom without saying anything. Went inside to inspect. Haven looked up when I came in. Her face was a mess. Red and puffy like she'd been crying for days. The kids were quiet, probably picking up on the tension. I walked through every room. Kitchen was cleared, living room mostly empty, their bedroom packed up, bathroom cleaned out. The only things left were my original furniture from when I lived at home and some built-in fixtures. Everything else was gone or staged in the driveway. I went back outside, told Dad they had until 6 p.m. to have everything off the property. He asked where they were supposed to go. I said that wasn't my problem anymore. Mom tried one more time, grabbed my arm and begged me to reconsider. Said they'd found a place but couldn't move in until December 15th. They just needed 2 weeks. Couldn't I give them 2 weeks? I removed her hand from my arm and walked back to my truck. Spent the next 3 hours driving around town. Grabbed lunch at a local diner. Drove past my old high school. Just killed time. At 4 p.m. I went back. The driveway was empty. The rental van was gone. Haven's SUV was gone. Just Dad's rental car sitting there because the bank had his truck. I used my key and went inside. The house was empty, completely cleared out. They'd even swept the floors. I walked through every room checking for damage. Nothing major. Some scuff marks on the walls. A few nail holes from where they'd hung pictures. Nothing that would cost much to fix. In the kitchen, there was an envelope on the counter addressed to me. I opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper. Mom's handwriting. It said, "We're staying at a motel off Route 32 until we can find something permanent. Haven and the kids are with her husband's brother. Ryland got an apartment in town. Your father is still having chest pains but refuses to go back to the hospital. I hope you got what you wanted. I hope destroying your family was worth it. You'll never hear from us again." I folded the paper and put it back in the envelope, left it on the counter, walked through the house one more time. This house I'd bought specifically so I could take it away from them. This house that represented 6 years of planning and preparation. It was just a house now, empty and quiet. I locked up and drove back to the city. Monday, I changed the locks. Tuesday, I hired a cleaning service to deep clean everything. Wednesday, I put the house on the market, listed it for $240,000. Got 3 offers by Friday, sold it to a young couple with a baby. They were excited about the backyard and the good school district. I closed in 3 weeks and made $60,000 profit after all expenses. Haven tried texting me in mid-December, said her husband had officially filed for separation, that she was living in a studio apartment with her 3 kids, that they'd enrolled in public school and were miserable, that this was all my fault. I blocked her number. Dad sent a message through Ryland's phone on Christmas Eve, said he forgave me, that he understood I was angry but family was family, and it was time to move past this. Forgave me, like he was the victim here. I blocked Ryland's number too. Mom tried calling from different numbers throughout January. I never answered. Eventually, she stopped. It's February now. I haven't heard from any of them in 3 weeks. I assume they've finally accepted that this is permanent. Someone asked in the comments of my first post what I actually wanted from all this. If I wanted them to suffer or if I wanted them to understand. The answer is both, and neither. What I wanted was for them to feel what I felt, powerless, excluded, like the life they'd built could be destroyed by people who were supposed to love them. Did I get that? Yeah, I did. They lost their house, their financial stability, their comfortable life. Haven lost her marriage, Dad lost his truck and possibly his health, Mom lost her peace of mind. Rylan lost whatever relationship he thought we had. Do I feel guilty? No. I spent 6 years being the family ATM while they treated me like I didn't matter. They made their choices. I made mine. Do I feel satisfied? Honestly, yes. More than I thought I would. Every time I think about them scrambling to pack their stuff, about Haven's breakdown, about Dad's chest pains that were probably just panic attacks, about Mom begging on that porch. Yeah, I feel satisfied. Does that make me a bad person? Maybe. Probably. I don't really care. They wanted to exclude me from Thanksgiving, told me I was a pathetic waste of space, said looking at me made them sick, suggested I should have been in the garage years ago. Well, now they know what real exclusion feels like. Now they know what it's like when someone with power decides you don't matter. And unlike them, I didn't just send cruel texts. I backed it up with action. They thought they could take my money for 6 years while treating me like garbage and there would be no consequences. They were wrong. I was at work when Mom texted me that Thanksgiving message. Now they're scattered across town in different apartments and motels, trying to rebuild lives they thought were secure. Turns out your chair can end up in the garage too, Dad. Turns out anyone can become a waste of space if the right person decides you are. They wanted me gone from their family. They got their wish, permanently, and I got mine.